I stopped at a small bakery to buy pastries for my construction crew, never expecting to hear two police officers talking about the bridge failure that nearly destroyed my company. Then I heard them mention the person behind it, and one sentence made me freeze. He knew how to make sure the blame went somewhere else. I stayed silent, pretending not to listen. But what I discovered next would expose a hidden betrayal, a dangerous scheme, and the person who tried to destroy everything I built. Before we go further, thank you for being here. It means more than you know. Tell me in the comments, what country or city are you watching from right now? You might be surprised how many people feel exactly what you are feeling. This is Revenge Dad, and this story is just getting started. This story contains fictional elements for educational purposes. Names and settings are coincidental. The lesson, however, is real. The bag of pastries was already waiting on the counter when I walked into Rosario's bakery that Wednesday morning. 12 croissants, 4 apple turnovers, and a box of cinnamon rolls for the crew pulling double shifts at the Henderson Road site. I had called the order in the night before, the way I always did when my people worked past midnight, and I had nothing better to offer them than butter and sugar and the knowledge that somebody remembered they were still out there. I was not dressed like William Carter, chairman of Carter Infrastructure Group, that morning. I wore a plain jacket over a flannel shirt, my old work boots that Elena had tried to throw away 3 times before she stopped trying, and a face that had not seen a razor in 4 days. The young woman behind the counter handed me my change without a second glance. That was the point. 35 years of running a company had taught me that the most useful thing a man in my position could do sometimes was to look like nobody at all. I sat down at the end of the counter with a cup of coffee while they boxed everything up. Through the front window, I could see the stretch of empty lot 3 blocks east where the Meridian Crossing construction site used to be. Just a chain-link fence now, and a rectangle of cracked concrete, and a city permit sign that had been weather-beaten into illegibility. I had not driven past that lot in 4 months. I was not sure why I had chosen this particular bakery this particular morning, except that it was close and I was tired, and the coffee here was better than anything my office machine had ever produced. That was when I heard the voice behind me. You hear about the Delgado case getting kicked back to the DA. The voice was relaxed, conversational, the tone of a man settling into a comfortable chair. I did not turn around. 2 officers in uniform I gathered from the reflection in the window glass. LAPD. They had their coffees and their morning, and no particular reason to watch what they said. "Which one?" the second officer said. His voice was younger, a little rougher around the edges. "The construction one, the bridge." My hand stopped moving toward my coffee cup. I left it where it was 2 inches from the rim, and I kept my eyes on the window. "Oh, that," the second officer said, and I heard the smirk in it, the comfortable familiarity of a story told enough times to lose its edges. "What about it?" "Nothing, just heard somebody upstairs was poking around again. Some city council thing." A pause, the sound of a paper cup being set down. "Doesn't matter. That thing's been buried so deep it'd take a backhoe to find it." "Hayes knew how to play it," the second officer said. "Gotta give the man that much." My chest tightened so sharply that I pressed my hand flat against the counter to keep myself steady. Hayes, Daniel Hayes, my son-in-law, the man who had been running operations at Carter Infrastructure for the past 4 years, the man I had been grooming to take over the company I had spent the better part of my life building. If he didn't have somebody covering for him, that bridge situation would have been his problem a long time ago, the first officer said. He was not being secretive. He was being conversational, the way men talk about things that stopped feeling real to them a long time ago. Way it is, everybody just figures the old man lost his grip. "Carter," the second officer said. "Carter." My jaw tightened so hard that I felt it in my back teeth. I picked up my coffee cup slowly, deliberately, because my hands wanted to shake, and I would not let them. I took a sip I did not taste, and kept my eyes on the fence line 3 blocks away. "The thing is," the first officer went on, dropping his voice half a notch out of habit rather than caution, "I heard there were reports, internal stuff, people who tried to flag it before the ribbon cutting." He made a short sound, something between a laugh and a dismissal. "Didn't go anywhere. You know how that goes." "Always somebody who tried to flag it," the second officer said. "Never anybody who actually made it stick." Hayes knew how to make sure of that. A chair scraped against the tile floor. One of them was shifting his weight, stretching out. Smart enough to let the blame slide somewhere else if it ever came to that. "You want that last donut? Go ahead." My heart was hammering against my sternum with a force that surprised me. I breathed through it slow, and even the way I used to breathe through contract negotiations that were going sideways, and I could not afford to let the other side see it. I had spent 35 years learning to keep my face from showing what was happening behind it. I used every one of those years right then. Daniel knew. That was what they were saying, wrapped in the casual shorthand of men who had long since filed the whole thing away under somebody else's problem. Daniel had known the bridge had issues before the opening ceremony, and he had made sure the blame was positioned to land somewhere other than on him. Somewhere like on me. I heard the two officers stand. Chairs pushed back, cups gathered the small sounds of people wrapping up a coffee break and heading back to a shift. I did not turn around. I watched their reflections move across the window glass as they walked toward the door, still talking, their voices dropping into something about a retirement party for somebody named Figueroa, light and easy, and already somewhere else entirely. The bell above the door chimed when they left. The woman behind the counter called out that my order was ready. I stood up. My knees felt the way they sometimes did after a long flight, stiff and reluctant, as though my body had been holding itself rigid for longer than it realized. I picked up the bag and the box, and I carried them to my truck. I sat behind the wheel for a moment without starting the engine. The pastries were on the passenger seat. 12 croissants, 4 apple turnovers, a box of cinnamon rolls for people who had been working since midnight and deserved better than what I was about to give them, which was a phone call saying the delivery would be late. I pulled out my phone and called my site manager, a steady man named Roy Briggs, who had been with the company for 11 years and never once asked me a question he did not need the answer to. "Roy," I said, "the order's at Rosario's on Boyle. Can you send somebody to pick it up? Something came up on my end." "Sure thing, Mr. Carter," Roy said. "Everything all right?" "Fine," I said. "Just something I need to take care of." I ended the call and sat there another moment, looking at the chain-link fence 3 blocks away, at the cracked concrete rectangle where something I had built with my name and my reputation and 35 years of never cutting corners had come apart 4 days after I stood in front of a crowd and shook the hand of a man named Richard Holt and smiled for the cameras. Then I started the engine and drove toward Bel Air. I was not going to the office. I was going to the room at the back of my house that I had not opened in 3 months. The room where I kept the files I had stopped letting myself look at, because looking at them and finding nothing had started to feel like something I could not keep doing. I had a place to start now. The office at the back of the house had been my father's before it was mine. He had built it himself, back when this property was smaller and the neighborhood was quieter. A wood-paneled room with a single window facing the garden and bookshelves that ran floor to ceiling on 3 walls. When I took over the house after he passed, I kept everything the way he had left it. The shelves, the desk, the brass lamp that threw a warm yellow circle over whatever you were reading. My wife Elena used to say it was the only room in the house that smelled like scents. I had not been inside since January. The key was where it always was, on the hook behind the kitchen door. I unlocked the office, pushed it open, and stood in the doorway for a moment while the stale air moved past me. Everything was exactly as I had left it. The filing cabinet against the far wall. The stacks of project binders on the lower shelves, organized by year and contract number. The way I had always organized them, going back to the first job we ever completed, a pedestrian overpass in Riverside, that had taken us 8 months and nearly bankrupted us twice. Meridian Crossing was in the second drawer from the top. 4 binders each one, 4 inches thick, held together with the kind of systematic order that used to make me proud. I carried them to the desk, sat down, turned on the brass lamp, and opened the first one. I told myself I was going to read carefully. I was going to go slowly page by page, and I was going to find whatever there was to find, without letting what I had heard in that bakery color what I was seeing. 35 years in this business had taught me that the worst thing you could do with a problem was go looking for confirmation of what you already believed. You had to let the documents speak first. By the time I reached page 47, the documents were speaking very clearly. The original vendor list for structural materials had been finalized in February of 2023, 14 months before the bridge opened. 3 primary suppliers, all of them vetted through our standard procurement process, competitive bids, site inspections, compliance certificates, the full procedure we had been using since the early 90s. I knew those suppliers. I had shaken hands with 2 of their presidents at industry conferences. In September of 2023, 6 weeks before the scheduled completion date, the vendor list changed. 3 new suppliers appeared, none of them part of the original bidding process. I turned the page to find the procurement exception authorization. The form required any time standard bidding procedure was bypassed, and found it. Signed and dated. The signature was not mine. It was not our VP of engineering. A careful man named Victor Fitch, who had never in 20 years approved an exception without calling me first. The signature was Daniel Hayes, COO. My jaw tightened so hard that I felt the pressure travel up into my temples. I pressed 2 fingers against the side of my head and breathed through it, slow and deliberate, the way a man breathes when he knows he cannot afford to fall apart before he finishes reading. I kept going. The pricing on the new suppliers was wrong in a way that took me 20 minutes to fully map out, because it had been structured to look right at a glance. The unit costs on the materials were lower, substantially lower, almost 40% below market rate for the grade of steel and composite specified in the original design. That part was visible if you knew what to look for. What was not immediately visible was that the total invoiced amounts had not changed. The line items had been restructured, broken into smaller categories, relabeled, spread across multiple purchase orders. But when I added them up on a piece of paper with a pencil, the way my father had taught me to, always check arithmetic by hand, the total came out within $3,000 of the original budget. Someone had swapped out the materials, pocketed the difference, and made the books look whole. My chest felt like something heavy was sitting on it. I stood up from the desk and walked to the window and looked out at the garden for a moment, because I needed something to look at that was not a piece of paper. The roses Elena had planted along the back fence were still blooming pale pink against the October brown of the grass, and I looked at them until my breathing came back to something that felt normal. Then I went back to the desk and opened my laptop. I logged into the company's internal email system using my chairman credentials, the same access I had held since we migrated to digital records in 2009. The access that Daniel had suggested politely twice in the past year that I might want to hand over to the IT governance committee as part of a modernization of executive access protocols. I had declined both times without explaining why. Now I understood my own instincts better than I had then. I searched for emails from the engineering team during the final 3 months of the Meridian Crossing project. The folder that should have contained those records came back empty. Not sparse, not partially archived. Empty the way a drawer looks when someone has gone through it deliberately and removed everything they did not want found. My hands balled into fists on the desk surface. I pressed them flat spread. My fingers made myself unclench. I picked up the phone and called our IT department. A young man answered on the second ring. "This is William Carter," I said. "I need the full access log for the Meridian Crossing email archive. Every login, every deletion, every access event for the past 18 months. Send it to my personal email, not the company account." There was a pause on the line. I could hear the young man deciding how to phrase what he wanted to say. "Mr. Carter," he started, "I would need to confirm authorization through the I am the chairman of this company," I said, and I kept my voice level because there was no point in making this harder than it needed to be. "My authorization is the authorization. I need that log before 3 o'clock this afternoon. Can you do that?" Another pause, shorter this time. "Yes, sir. I'll have it to you." "Thank you," I said, and ended the call. I sat back in the chair and looked at the 4 open binders spread across my father's desk. Outside, through the window, the roses moved in a light wind off the canyon. Somewhere in the city, Daniel Hayes was sitting in my office on the 38th floor of a building my company paid for making decisions with my company's money, wearing the title I had given him, carrying the trust I had extended to him the day I looked at my daughter's face on her wedding day and thought, "This one is different. This one I can believe in." My eyes burned. Not tears. I was not ready for tears, and I was not sure I would ever be ready for what tears would mean. But the particular sting of a man who has just understood something. He cannot ununderstand something that is going to change every single thing that comes after it. I turned to a fresh page in my notepad and picked up a pen. There was work to do. The log would arrive by 3. Until then, I had 3 more binders and 40 years of knowing how to read what numbers were trying to hide. I started reading. The email from IT arrived at 2:47 in the afternoon, 17 minutes ahead of my deadline. 47 pages. I printed every one of them on the machine in the corner of the office and carried the stack to the desk and sat down with a fresh cup of coffee that I did not touch for the next 2 hours. A system access log is not exciting reading. It is columns of timestamps, user credentials, IP addresses, and action codes, the digital equivalent of a building security footage showing you who opened which door and when. Most people would look at 47 pages of that and see nothing but noise. I had been reading documents like this for 35 years long enough to know that the noise was exactly where you needed to look. I found what I was looking for on page 12. On the night of October 9th, 2023, 4 days before the Meridian Crossing ribbon, cutting a user account with full administrative privileges had logged into the company's email server at 11:43 in the evening. The session lasted 31 minutes. During those 31 minutes, 412 emails were moved from active folders to a deletion queue and then permanently purged from the server. 412 emails in 31 minutes. That was not someone cleaning up their inbox. That was someone who knew exactly what they were looking for and exactly where it was. My hand pressed flat against the desk so hard that I felt the wood grain through my palm. I kept reading. The administrative account used for the deletion had a credential ID I did not recognize at first glance. I cross-referenced it against the IT department's internal directory, a separate document I had requested along with the log, and found it listed under a service account name that translated in plain language to a maintenance credential used for system-level operations. That kind of credential was not supposed to be in the hands of any individual user. It was supposed to be locked in IT's master access vault and used only for scheduled maintenance with supervisor approval. According to the log, it had last been accessed from a device registered to Daniel Hayes. The coffee cup was in my hand before I realized I had picked it up. I set it back down carefully because my grip was unsteady in a way that had nothing to do with caffeine, and a spilled cup was the last thing I needed on top of 47 pages of evidence that my son-in-law had spent a careful evening erasing whatever the engineering team had tried to tell him. I picked up the phone and called Marcus Webb. Marcus had done digital forensics work for us on a vendor dispute 4 years earlier, a straightforward job involving some manipulated purchase records that had saved the company a significant amount in litigation costs. He was methodical, discreet, and he charged accordingly. I had kept his number. He answered on the third ring. Web Forensics. Marcus, it's William Carter. I have a situation. There was a brief pause, the sound of a chair adjusting. Mr. Carter, it's been a while. What kind of situation? Email deletion, company server. I have the access log showing a credential tied to a specific individual wiped 400 emails in a single session. I need to know if any content is recoverable, and I need a certified report on the process chain of custody, the whole procedure, something that would hold up if this went legal. When did the deletion occur? October 9th of last year. Another pause, longer this time. That's 11 months ago. Depending on your backup architecture, there may be something on a secondary or tertiary server. A lot of companies run automatic backups on a cycle that outlasts the primary deletion. Do you know your backup configuration? I know we had a secondary server installed in 2021 for disaster recovery, I said. Whether it's still capturing, I couldn't tell you without checking. Give me remote access to the server environment, and I can tell you within a couple of hours, Marcus said. If there's anything recoverable, I'll find it. If there isn't, I'll document that too. Either way, you get a certified report. I'll have my IT director send you the credentials within the hour, I said. One condition: this goes through my personal authorization only, not through the company's standard request chain. Marcus did not ask why. That was one of the things I had always appreciated about him. Understood, he said. I'll start as soon as I have access. I ended the call and sat back in the chair. Through the window, the garden had gone gray in the late afternoon light, the roses losing their color as the sun dropped behind the canyon ridge. I had been in this room for nearly 6 hours. My back ached in the specific way it did when I had been sitting too long, without moving a dull pressure along the left side that my doctor had been telling me for 3 years to address with something other than ignoring it. I stood up and walked to the window, pressing one hand against the glass. The coolness of it traveled up through my fingers and into my wrist, and I held it there and made myself think clearly about what I now had. I had a vendor substitution signed by Daniel, bypassing standard procurement. I had a 400 email deletion from a credential tied to Daniel's device 4 days before the bridge opened. I had a folder that should have contained months of engineering communications and currently contained nothing. What I did not have yet was the content of those emails. I did not have names. I did not have the specific warnings that had been sent and then erased. I did not have the face behind the engineering reports, the person or people who had tried to raise the alarm and been answered with a cursor selecting all and a finger pressing delete. Marcus called back at 6:14. I was still at the desk. "You got lucky?" he said, and I could hear the particular satisfaction in his voice of a man who had found something he was not certain he would find. "Your disaster recovery server was still running automatic weekly backups through a third-party vendor. The primary deletion cleared the main server, but the backup cycle had already captured a snapshot 48 hours before the wipe. That snapshot is intact." My throat tightened. "What's in it?" "I haven't opened individual emails. That's your job or your attorney's. But I can tell you the metadata. Subject lines, senders, recipients, timestamps." I heard keyboard clicks. "You've got 34 emails from a sender listed as H. Reed, Senior Structural Engineer, all addressed to Daniel Hayes. The subject lines use variations of the same language: structural concerns, load, capacity review, material specification, deviation, more clicks. All 34 sent between May and September of 2023. All 34 deleted in the same session on October 9th. H. Reed. The name landed in my chest like something falling from a height. Senior Structural Engineer. Someone on my team, someone whose job it was to make sure people did not get hurt by the things we built, had spent 5 months sending warnings to Daniel Hayes, and Daniel Hayes had spent one evening in October making sure no one would ever read them. "Marcus," I said, and my voice came out lower than I intended, rougher around the edges. "I need the certified report. Full documentation of the recovery process, the backup server, provenance, the chain of custody. Everything that would be required to present this in a California court." "I'll have it to you by tomorrow morning," Marcus said. "Tonight?" I said. A beat of quiet. "Tonight?" he agreed. I ended the call and opened the company's HR system on my laptop. I typed the name into the search field, Harold Reed, Senior Structural Engineer. The file came up in seconds. Hire date, project assignments, performance reviews, all of it clean. All of it the record of a careful and competent man. And at the bottom of the file, 2 lines that made the muscles in my jaw contract so hard that I tasted copper at the back of my throat. Termination date July 14th, 2023. Reason performance issues. Approving signature Daniel Hayes, COO. I had never seen this termination. I had never approved it. I had never been told that a senior structural engineer had been removed from the Meridian Crossing project. 3 months before, the bridge opened a bridge that, 3 months later, had come apart on a Tuesday morning with 23 people on it. I sat at my father's desk in my father's chair under my father's lamp, and I felt the full weight of what had been done inside my company without my knowledge settle across my shoulders like something I was going to be carrying for a very long time. Then I turned to a fresh page in my notepad, wrote the name Harold Reed at the top, and circled it. There was a contact listed in the HR file under emergency notification. A son, Lucas Reed. A phone number with a 310 area code. I did not call it yet. There was one more thing I needed to know first, and it was going to take me the rest of the night to find it. I did not sleep that night. I tried sometime around 1 in the morning, lying on the couch in the office with a blanket pulled up to my chin, the way I used to sleep on job sites when I was younger, and the project demanded it. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same thing, a folder icon on a screen, empty the way a room looks, after someone has cleared it out in a hurry and left nothing behind to explain where everything went. By 5 in the morning, I had given up on sleep entirely. I made a pot of coffee in the kitchen, strong enough to hold a spoon upright, and carried it back to the office and sat down with the 2 sets of documents I had set aside the night before. The original vendor contracts on the left side of the desk, the actual payment records on the right. This was the part of the work I had always been good at. Not the handshaking, not the ribbon cuttings, not the speeches at industry dinners where everybody said the right things and nobody said anything true. The part I had always been good at was sitting down with 2 sets of numbers that were supposed to match and finding exactly where they stopped matching and why. I started with the original contracts. The 3 primary vendors for structural materials had submitted bids in February of 2023. Pacific Coast Steel out of Long Beach Inland Composite Systems, based in Riverside, and a concrete supplier called Westfield Building, products out of Oxnard. All three had been through our standard vetting process. All three had references I had personally reviewed. The total contracted value for materials across all three suppliers came to $14,340,000. Then I moved to the payment records for September and October of 2023, the final 2 months of the project. The three original vendors were gone. In their place, three new suppliers appeared in the payment ledger, companies I had never heard of, with names that had the generic quality of entities created for a specific purpose and not much else. Meridian Supply Partners LLC, Coastal Structural Holdings, Pacific Infrastructure Materials Group. I ran the unit costs first. The steel spec in the original design called for a particular grade of structural steel, ASTM A992, the standard for bridge construction, a grade I had been specifying in contracts since before some of my current employees were born. The price per ton from Pacific Coast Steel in the original contract was in line with what I knew the market to be running. The price per ton from Meridian Supply Partners was 38% lower. 38% on structural bridge steel. That was not a discount. That was a different product wearing the same label. My coffee cup hit the desk harder than I intended. I picked up my pencil and started the arithmetic my father had taught me to always do by hand, because a man who could not check his own numbers with a pencil and paper was a man who deserved to be cheated. The total payments to the three new vendors over September and October came to $14,291,000, $49,000 less than the original contracted total. A rounding difference that would barely register in a project of this size, the kind of variance that got waved through in a final budget reconciliation without a second look. But the actual cost of the materials, delivered at the prices Meridian Supply Partners and the other two vendors had charged per unit, should have come to somewhere between $8.5 and $9 million. Not 14, not anywhere close to 14. The difference between what was paid and what the materials actually cost was somewhere in the neighborhood of $5 million. $5 million had moved through my company's accounts, passed through three vendors I had never approved, and gone somewhere I could not yet see. My chest felt hollow, not the heavy pressing feeling from the day before, something worse than that. Something that felt like standing in a building you had spent your life constructing and discovering that the floor beneath your feet was not what you thought it was made of. I stood up and walked to the bookshelf and pulled down the Meridian Crossing project binder for financial oversight, the one that should have contained the payment authorization forms for every transaction over $50,000. The forms were there, signed and dated in the proper sequence, covering every payment to every vendor. The authorizing signature on every single payment to the three new vendors was Daniel Hayes. Not mine, not Victor Fitch's, not our CFO, a steady woman named Patricia Holman, who had been running our finances for 12 years, and who I was now profoundly grateful had apparently been kept entirely out of this particular set of transactions. I carried the binder back to the desk and sat down and opened my laptop. I typed the name Holt & Associates Construction Supply into a business records search. The result came back: a Delaware limited liability company registered 14 months ago. Registered agent listed as a law firm in Wilmington that specialized in what the industry called anonymous entity formation, the legal and entirely common practice of creating a company that told you as little as possible about who actually owned it. In Delaware, that was not just possible, it was standard. My eyes moved from the screen to the filing cabinet in the corner, where I kept a box of photographs from project completions going back to the company's early years. I knew without looking which photograph I was thinking about. I had looked at it enough times in the past year that I could see it without opening the box. The Meridian Crossing ribbon cutting, October 13th, 2023. William Carter on the left, scissors, in hand, smiling the way a man smiles when he believes the thing he is standing in front of represents something worth smiling about. And on the right hand, extended for the photograph, a wide smile under silver hair, the kind of smile that had been practiced in front of cameras for 20 years. Congressman Richard Holt. The name on the company was Holt. The man at the ribbon cutting was Holt. Those two facts were not evidence. They were a question, a very specific, very cold question that had settled into the base of my skull and was not going to leave until I had an answer. I needed someone who could confirm the numbers, someone who had access to the payment records, who would know which transactions had moved through which accounts, and who I could trust to tell me what they knew without asking me why I was asking. There was only one person in the company who fit every part of that description. I had known Margaret Torres for 20 years. She had been our chief accounting officer since the early 2000s, a careful and precise woman who kept her office colder than anyone else in the building and who had never once in 2 decades let an error slide past her desk without flagging it. If something had moved through our accounts that should not have moved, Maggie had seen it. I picked up the phone and dialed her direct line. She answered before the second ring, which told me she was already at her desk, which told me it was later than I had realized. "Maggie," I said, "it's William. I need to see you this morning, before anyone else comes in." There was a pause on her end, not the pause of someone surprised, but the pause of someone who had been waiting for a specific phone call for a specific amount of time and had just heard it arrive. "I'll be here at 7:30, she said. "Come to my office, and William." Another pause. "Use the side entrance." She ended the call before I could ask her why. I sat with the phone in my hand for a moment, my thumb pressed against the edge of the case, hard enough to leave a mark. Then I set it down and looked at the name I had written on my notepad the night before, Harold Reed, circled twice now. Below it, in smaller letters, Lucas Reed, 310. One thing at a time, Maggie first. I closed the binders, straightened the desk, the way my father had always straightened a desk at the end of a working session. Everything squared to the edges, nothing left at an angle, and went to find a clean shirt. The side entrance to the Carter Infrastructure Building on Avenue of the Stars was a service door that most of the staff did not know existed. It opened off a loading corridor on the ground floor, accessible from the parking structure, through a stairwell that smelled of concrete and motor oil, and the particular institutional quiet of a building before it had fully woken up. I had used it maybe 3 times in 35 years, twice during a labor dispute in the 90s, when I did not want picketers to see me coming in, and once when I had a migraine so severe that I could not face the lobby lights. I used it a 4th time that Thursday morning at 7:58, 2 minutes before Maggie had told me to arrive. The accounting department occupied the east side of the 12th floor. At this hour, the open plan section was dark, the workstations empty, the overhead lights still on their overnight setting. Maggie's office was at the far end, a glass-walled room that she kept at 68 degrees year-round, cold enough that visiting staff often brought a sweater. The light inside was on. Through the glass I could see her already at her desk, her reading glasses pushed up onto her forehead, both hands flat on the surface in front of her. I knocked once and pushed the door open. Maggie Torres looked up at me with the expression of a woman who had rehearsed this moment more than once, and was now discovering that the rehearsal had not fully prepared her for the real thing. Her eyes went bright at the corners, not tears yet, but the particular shine that comes just before them when a person has been holding something in for so long that the simple act of someone walking through the door to finally hear it is almost more than they can manage. She stood up. Her chair rolled back and hit the credenza behind her with a soft thud. She crossed to the office door, reached past me and turned the lock. The click of it was very loud in the empty room. Then she went to her desk, bent down, and pulled open the bottom drawer, the deep one, the kind designed for hanging files. From the very back of it, behind a row of labeled folders that had nothing to do with Meridian Crossing, she lifted out a manila envelope, thick, sealed with 2 strips of tape across the flap. She held it in both hands for a moment, looking down at it. The way a person looks at something they have been carrying so long, they have almost forgotten what it felt like before the weight was there. She set it on the desk in front of me. "I have been keeping that for nearly a year, William," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands, when she pulled them back from the envelope, were trembling slightly at the fingertips. "Nearly a year waiting for you to ask." I looked at the envelope, then at her face. "Why didn't you come to me?" "Because I tried to think of a way that was safe." She pulled off her reading glasses and set them on the desk beside the envelope, pressing her fingers against the bridge of her nose, the way people do when they are trying to hold themselves together. "I thought about an anonymous report. But, William, there are 3 people in this company who could have put together what's in that envelope. 3? An anonymous tip would have pointed at one of 3 people the moment anyone looked at it carefully, and I was one of them." She sat down heavily in her chair. I pulled the visitor's chair close to the desk and sat down across from her, because this was not a conversation I was going to have standing up. "I found a lawyer," Maggie continued. "8 months ago, about 2 weeks after I first noticed the discrepancies, I went to see her on a Saturday morning, paid for the consultation out of my own pocket. She told me that without a corroborating witness outside the finance department, what I had was suggestive but not sufficient to compel an investigation. It was my word and my documents against a COO with full authorization to approve the transactions in question. And Daniel, I said. The muscle in Maggie's jaw tightened. Daniel called me into his office 3 days after I started asking questions about the Meridian invoices. She folded her hands on the desk. I could see the knuckles whitening. He was very calm about it, very pleasant. He mentioned that he had been reviewing some older financial records routine audit work, he said, and that he had come across an accounting error from 5 years ago, a misclassification of expenses on the Thornton Avenue project. Small amount, easy to miss. She looked at me steadily. Easy to prosecute. My stomach turned over. He threatened you. He informed me of a risk, Maggie said, and there was something in the way she said it, dry, precise, the voice of a woman who had turned that sentence over in her mind so many times it had worn smooth. And then he said he was sure it was nothing, and he hoped I wasn't under too much stress, and he went back to his phone call. She exhaled sharply through her nose. I went back to my desk, and I spent the next 3 days trying to decide whether I was brave enough to do the right thing anyway. And I was not brave enough, she said, and her voice cracked on the last word just slightly, just enough. She pressed her lips together and straightened in her chair and looked at me without looking away. I was not brave enough to risk my pension and my reputation and 20 years of work on a complaint that a lawyer had already told me was not strong enough. But I was not willing to destroy the evidence either. So I copied everything I had, and I put it in that envelope, and I put it in the back of that drawer, and I told myself that if the day came when someone with more standing than me started asking questions, she stopped, cleared her throat. I would be ready. I reached across the desk and picked up the envelope. It was heavier than it looked. I turned it over in my hands, feeling the thickness of it all, those months of waiting compressed into paper and ink. Open it, Maggie said. I broke the tape along the flap and spread the contents across the desk. Payment records, bank transfer confirmations, a spreadsheet Maggie had built herself, cross-referencing the original vendor contracts against the final payment ledger with the discrepancies highlighted in yellow. And at the bottom of the stack, a single page with 2 columns of figures, one labeled actual material, cost, one labeled amount paid. And at the bottom of the page, circled twice in red pen, a number, $4.2 million. That's the total across 3 projects, Maggie said. Not just a Meridian. There were 2 smaller jobs, before at Riverside County and the Pasadena connector. Smaller amounts, same structure. I think Meridian was the largest because by then they had worked out all the details. I set the page down on the desk. My hand was not entirely steady. I pressed it flat against the document and held it there. There's something else, Maggie said. She leaned forward and pulled a single sheet from the bottom of the pile, a payment authorization record different from the others. The Holt and Associates transfers were not just approved by Daniel. Look at the secondary authorization field. I looked. In the field labeled Secondary Approving Authority, a field that existed for transactions flagged as requiring additional oversight. There was a second signature, not Daniel's, another name entirely listed under an informal title that had no place in our company's actual organizational structure. Project Financial Liaison, Meridian Crossing. The signature was Richard Holt's. The air went out of my lungs in a slow, controlled way that had nothing to do with calmness. Richard Holt had not just received money from a company attached to his name, he had signed the authorization to transfer that money to himself, using a title that Daniel had apparently invented for the purpose and that no one on our board had ever approved. This was not a conflict of interest. This was not a gray area. This was bribery and wire fraud, and at least 2 federal statutes that my lawyer was going to be very unhappy about when I called him later today. Maggie, I said, and my voice came out rough and low, dragged across the gravel of everything I was trying not to let show on my face. You have been sitting with this for almost a year. Yes, she said, alone. Yes. I looked at her across the desk. This careful, precise woman who had kept my company's books with more integrity than anyone had a right to expect, who had been threatened and frightened and had still not destroyed the evidence, who had sat in this cold office every working day for the better part of a year, waiting for the morning someone would finally walk through the door and be ready to hear the truth. Thank you, I said, just that. Just those 2 words, because anything more would have been inadequate, and Maggie Torres deserved better than inadequacy. Her chin lifted slightly. Her eyes were bright again, the way they had been when I first walked in, but steadier now, the shine of someone who has set down a weight they were not sure they could carry another step, and discovered the ground is still there beneath their feet. I was almost at the door when Maggie said, "Sit down, William, there is one more thing." Something in her voice, not urgency exactly, but the particular weight of a person who has saved the worst part for last, turned me around. I went back to the chair and sat. Maggie pulled a second envelope from the same bottom drawer, smaller than the first letter sized, with her initials written in the corner, in the careful block letters she used for everything she considered important. "The Holt and Associates payments did not begin with Meridian Crossing," she said. She opened the envelope and laid 3 documents on the desk between us. There were 2 projects before it: the Riverside County Overpass, the Pasadena Connector. Smaller contracts, smaller amounts, but the same structure. Same vendors, same transfer pattern, same secondary authorization, signature. I leaned forward and looked at the figures. The Riverside job had moved $400,000 through the same shell account. The Pasadena Connector, $680,000. Meridian Crossing, $3.1 million. "They practiced," I said. The words felt like gravel in my mouth. "That is exactly what it looks like," Maggie said. 2 smaller runs to test the system, then Meridian, which was large enough to matter. She tapped the Riverside document with 1 finger. "What worries me most about the early ones is the timeline. Riverside was 18 months before Meridian. They had a year and a half to identify every weakness in the process, every person who might ask questions, every record that needed to disappear." My jaw tightened until I felt it in my back teeth. A year and a half. Daniel had been building this while I shook his hand at project meetings and introduced him to clients as the future of this company. "The secondary signature on all 3, I said. "Always Holt." "Always Holt," Maggie said. "Same stamp, same title, project financial liaison, a title that does not exist in any of our organizational documents." I checked 3 times. She folded her hands on the desk. "A man in his position signing payment authorizations that direct money into his own company. That is not a gray area, William." "No," I said, "it is not." I gathered the documents into both envelopes and held them in my lap. The paper felt heavier than its weight. $4.2 million and the career of a congressman and the reputation of a company I had built from nothing, all compressed into 2 manila envelopes on a Thursday morning. "Maggie," I looked at her directly. "How are you holding up?" Her chin lifted, that small, precise gesture I had noticed before, the movement of a woman who had decided a long time ago that she was not going to let anyone see her fold. "I have been better," she said, "but I have also been a great deal worse than this. The worst part was not the threat. The worst part was coming in every morning and sitting at that desk and watching the quarterly reports go out with numbers I knew were wrong and not being able to say a word about it." Her voice thinned on the last sentence, not breaking, just stretched tight the way a wire sounds when too much tension has been put through it for too long. She pressed her fingertips against the desk surface and held them there. "That is finished now," I said. She exhaled long and slow and deliberate, the breath of someone releasing something they had been holding in their chest for the better part of a year. "Yes," she said. "I suppose it is." I stood up, tucked both envelopes under my arm, and picked up my jacket. "Don't come in Monday," I said again. "Take the day. I'll call you when I need you." "I will be ready," she said. I left through the side entrance again. In the stairwell, I stopped on the landing between the 9th and 10th floors, pulled out my phone, and looked at the name I had written at the bottom of my notepad the night before. Lucas Reed. 310. I had one more stop to make before I called that number. I needed to know everything Daniel had prepared before I walked into whatever came next. That meant going back to the server. It meant calling Marcus Webb again. It meant finding out exactly what Daniel had built to bury me with before he had the chance to use it. Arthur Simmons had been practicing law in Los Angeles for 38 years, and in that time he had developed the particular quality of a man who had heard everything and was therefore surprised by nothing. I had known him since 1998, when he helped me navigate a contract dispute that would have ended the company before it had properly begun. He was 71 now, sharp as he had ever been, and he operated out of a small office on Bunker Hill that smelled of old paper and strong coffee and the accumulated patience of a very long career. I called him from the stairwell. He told me to come in at 2 o'clock. I was there at 1:55. "You look like you haven't slept," Arthur said when I sat down across from his desk. "I haven't," I said. "Not really." "Tell me what you have." I laid it out for him: the vendor substitution, the deleted emails, Marcus Webb's forensic report, Maggie's envelope, the Holt and Associates payment, records the secondary authorization signature with the congressional notary's stamp. Arthur listened without interrupting his pen, turning slowly between his fingers, his expression giving away nothing until I finished. Then he exhaled through his nose and set the pen down. "The name on the company," he said. "You need that confirmed before anything else. If Richard Holt is the beneficial owner of Holt and Associates Construction Supply, everything else you have just told me becomes significantly more serious." He reached for his keyboard. "The Corporate Transparency Act requires beneficial ownership disclosure to FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. I have access to query that database through our compliance certification. Give me 10 minutes. I sat in the chair across from him and watched the afternoon light move across the bookshelves while Arthur worked. My hands were flat on my knees. My chest felt tight in a way that had been with me since Wednesday morning and showed no sign of leaving. Arthur looked up from his screen. "Richard Holt," he said, "listed as sole beneficial owner of Holt and Associates Construction Supply, LLC, registered in Delaware 14 months ago." He held my gaze. "The same Richard Holt who sits on the California Joint Legislative Committee on Infrastructure Oversight." The air in the room felt different after he said it, heavier somehow. "That committee has direct oversight authority over Caltrans project reviews," Arthur continued. "A man in that position making a phone call to the right person at the right time could absolutely influence how quickly an investigation concludes and what it concludes." He leaned back in his chair. "William, what you have brought me today involves federal bribery statutes, honest services fraud, and wire fraud across state lines. This is not a civil matter. This goes to the FBI and the Department of Justice." "I know," I said. "You also need a witness inside the project," Arthur said. "Someone who can speak to the decisions made on the ground. The documents are strong, but documents without testimony leave room for an opposing attorney to construct alternative explanations." "There was an engineer," I said. "Harold Reed. He sent 34 warning emails to Daniel Hayes over 5 months. Daniel deleted everyone and then fired him." I stopped. "I found his HR file last night. He passed away. Nearly 10 months ago." Arthur's expression did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted the particular stillness of a man absorbing something genuinely bad. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "He has a son," I said. "Lucas Reed, also an engineer. He was on the project." Arthur was already typing. 30 seconds later, he looked up. "Lucas Reed, current address in Culver City." He wrote the number on a notepad and slid it across the desk. He filed a complaint with the California Labor Board 7 months ago, wrongful termination and retaliation claim on behalf of his father's estate. The claim was denied for insufficient evidence. My throat tightened so sharply that I had to swallow twice before I could speak. Harold Reed had tried every channel available to him, and every channel had closed. "I'll contact him tonight," I said. Arthur nodded. "Be careful how you approach him. He has reason not to trust people who say they want to help." I picked up the notepad, folded it once, and put it in my jacket pocket. Through the window behind Arthur's desk, downtown Los Angeles, spread out in the flat afternoon light, glass towers and concrete, and 12 million people going about their Thursday with no idea that somewhere in the machinery of the city, something had been broken for a long time and was only now beginning to be found. "Arthur," I said, standing. "One more thing. Since Wednesday, Daniel has known someone is asking questions. I don't know how much he knows or how fast he'll move." Arthur's expression hardened into something I recognized from 1998, the face of a man switching from advisor to combatant. "Then we move faster," he said. "Call me after you speak to the son." I left his office at 3:15 and drove toward the freeway with the afternoon sun coming through the windshield and Arthur's notepad in my pocket and the specific cold knowledge that I was no longer the only person in motion. Marcus called at 7:40 that evening, while I was sitting in my truck in the parking structure beneath my building engine, off Arthur's notepad still in my jacket pocket. "I went back into the backup server," Marcus said without preamble. "The snapshot I found earlier captured more than just the deleted engineering emails. There's a secondary folder, looks like a personal archive Daniel was running through the company's system. He probably forgot the backup server existed." My hand tightened on the phone. "What's in it?" "A correspondence thread between Daniel Hayes and an outside attorney. Not your company's counsel, a private criminal defense firm out of Century City." Marcus paused. William, this thread starts in August of 2023, 3 months before the bridge opened. The number landed in my chest like something dropped from height. 3 months before the ribbon cutting, before the cameras, before Richard Holt and I stood side by side smiling at a crowd that had no idea what was holding that structure together. "What does it say?" I asked. "I'll read you the relevant portion." I heard Marcus pulling up the file. Daniel writes to the attorney, need documentation framework, establishing executive override authority for vendor selection. Specifically, language showing final approval came from the chairman level, not operations. The attorney responds 3 days later with a set of template documents. Marcus stopped. "The templates have your name filled in, William Carter, chairman, authorizing the vendor substitution, authorizing the material changes, authorizing everything." I pressed my free hand against the dashboard and held it there. The concrete of the parking structure was gray and low around me, and the fluorescent lights overhead were humming at a frequency I could feel behind my eyes. "There's one more email," Marcus said, his voice careful now. Daniel to the attorney, dated September 3rd. He writes, "Keep this ready. If it goes wrong, we'll need it within 48 hours. September 3rd, 6 weeks before the bridge opened. Daniel had been carrying a loaded weapon with my name on it for 6 weeks, waiting to see if he would need to use it. "Marcus," I said, "the certified report, chain of custody full provenance on the backup server. I need it airtight." "Already building it," he said. "You'll have it tonight." I ended the call and sat in the truck for another minute, my hands still flat on the dashboard. The thing I had feared since Wednesday morning, not that Daniel had done what I suspected, but that he had done it more thoroughly than I had imagined, was sitting in front of me now in plain language. He had not just stolen from the company. He had not just endangered 23 people on a bridge that was never built to hold them safely. He had prepared with legal assistance and considerable patience to make certain that if any of it came apart, I would be the one sitting across from a federal investigator trying to explain documents with my own signature on them. I got out of the truck and took the elevator up. In the apartment, I poured 2 fingers of bourbon and did not drink it. I stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the city lights spread across the basin below, and I thought about a man named Harold Reed, who had spent 5 months writing warnings that nobody read, who had been removed from the project he was trying to protect, and who had died without ever seeing anyone held accountable for what they had done to his work and to his name. I thought about his son. I picked up the phone and looked at the number Arthur had written on the notepad. Lucas Reed, 310 area code, Culver City. I did not call yet. It was nearly 8 o'clock, and what I needed to say to Lucas Reed was not something I was going to say over the phone. I needed to be in the same room. I needed to look at him directly. I set the phone down and picked up Marcus's certified report when it arrived 40 minutes later. I read every page. Then I put it with Maggie's envelope and the 2 sets of financial documents and Arthur's notes in a box that I locked in the filing cabinet in the back office. I went to bed at 11. I lay in the dark and thought about September 3rd and 48 hours, and a set of templates with my name already typed into every signature line. Tomorrow, I would find Lucas Reed. Lucas Reed opened the door of his Culver City apartment at 7 in the evening and looked at me the way a man looks at something he has been half expecting for a long time without being certain it would ever actually arrive. He was younger than I had pictured, early 30s, dark circles under his eyes that spoke of months rather than days, a stillness about him that did not read as calm so much as carefully managed. He studied me from the doorway, arms loose at his sides, making no move to speak first. I did not push him. Then he stepped back and held the door open. I went in. The apartment was small and orderly. Engineering drawings were pinned to one wall, not Meridian Crossing, something else, a current project. A photograph on the bookshelf caught my eye, a man in his late 50s in a hard hat, squinting into the sun at a job site, one hand raised to shade his eyes. The resemblance was immediate and unmistakable. "That's my father," Lucas said from behind me. "I know," I said. "I found his HR file 3 days ago." Lucas moved past me to the kitchen counter and stood with his arms crossed his jaw, set at an angle that told me he had decided before I knocked that he was not going to make this easy. That was fair. It was more than fair. "You fired him," Lucas said. The words hit me squarely in the sternum. "Daniel Hayes fired him," I said, using an authorization he was not entitled to make without my knowledge. I never signed off on it. I never knew it happened until 72 hours ago. Lucas studied me, with the careful measuring look of a man who had learned the hard way what it cost to believe people who said they wanted to help. His jaw worked once tightening and releasing. "I filed a complaint with the labor board," he said. 7 months ago, wrongful termination retaliation under Labor Code 1102.5. They closed it in 6 weeks, insufficient evidence. He said the last 2 words the way people say things they have repeated so many times the meaning has started to separate from the sound. "I know," I said. "Arthur Simmons found the filing." "Then you know I already tried the right channels," Lucas said, "and the right channels told me to go home." "Yes," I said. "That's why I'm here instead of sending a letter." Something shifted in his expression, not softening exactly, but a hairline crack in the surface. He pulled out a chair from the kitchen table and sat down heavily, pressing both hands flat on the tabletop. I sat across from him. "Tell me what you know," he said. I told him everything: the vendor substitution, the deleted emails, the $4.2 million. Holt's signature on the payment authorizations, the templates with my name filled in. I did not soften any of it, and I did not editorialize. I just laid it out the way I would present a structural report, fact sequence implication. When I finished, Lucas was quiet for a moment, staring at the table surface. Then he looked up. "My father sent 34 emails," he said. 34, over 5 months. He documented every deviation from spec, every material substitution, every load calculation that didn't add up. He was meticulous. His voice thickened on the last word, and he stopped pressing his knuckles briefly against his mouth before he continued. "Daniel Hayes read none of them, or he read all of them and did nothing. Either way." "I know," I said. "He died 4 months after they let him go." Lucas's eyes were bright now, not with tears held back, but with the particular intensity of a man who has been carrying grief long enough that it has become indistinguishable from anger. "His doctor said stress. I said Daniel Hayes." The words landed in the room and stayed there. I leaned forward. "Lucas, I need to ask you something directly. Your father kept paper copies of his reports. Are they still—" "In the closet," Lucas said before I could finish. He was already standing. "I've had them since the day I cleared out his office. I was waiting for someone to ask." He crossed the room and opened a closet door, and I saw the cardboard box on the top shelf, worn at the corners, labeled in the careful block handwriting of a man who believed that documentation was the last line of defense against a world that preferred convenient fictions. Lucas lifted it down and set it on the table between us. He looked at me across the box, his jaw still tight, his eyes still bright with that particular mixture of grief and fury that only comes from watching something unjust go unanswered for too long. "I went to the labor board because I thought the system would work," he said. "It didn't." He put one hand on top of the box. "So, what do we do now?" Before I tell you what Lucas pulled out of that box and what his father left behind, that changed everything, type bridge in the comments. So I know you are still with me. Every comment means more than you know. Please note, the story you are about to hear contains some fictional elements woven in for storytelling purposes. It may not reflect any specific events, and if this kind of story is not for you, it is perfectly fine to step away now. Lucas opened the box the way his father had probably taught him to open any technical file carefully with both hands, treating the contents as something that deserved to be handled with intention. He lifted out a stack of bound reports, each one dated and numbered, in the same careful block handwriting I had seen on the label outside. 11 months of work, Lucas said. He set the stack between us and pulled the top report from the pile. My father started flagging issues in May of 2023, 2 months after the vendor substitution. He didn't know about the substitution. Specifically, he just knew the materials arriving on site didn't match the spec he had signed off on. He opened the report to a tabbed page and turned it to face me. The numbers were precise and unambiguous. Harold Reed had measured the actual load-bearing capacity of the substitute materials against the ASTM A992 specification required by the original design. The difference was 23%. In bridge engineering, 23% was not a rounding error. It was the difference between a structure that held and one that eventually didn't. He calculated the failure threshold. Lucas said, his voice flat and controlled in the way of someone who has gone over these numbers so many times that the emotion has been temporarily worn away, leaving only the facts. With the substitute materials and the projected daily traffic load on that corridor, he estimated stress fractures would begin developing within 6 to 12 months of opening. Lucas tapped the page. The bridge failed on day 4 because a convoy of overweight commercial trucks crossed simultaneously. That was bad luck on top of bad engineering. Without the trucks, it might have lasted another 8 months before something gave. My throat felt raw. I looked at the numbers on the page and thought about 23 people on a Tuesday morning who had no reason to think the ground beneath them was anything other than solid. He sent the first report to Daniel in May, I said. May 14th, Lucas confirmed. Then again in June, July, August, each one more detailed than the last because my father kept thinking that if he just explained it clearly enough, if he just found the right way to show what the numbers meant, someone would listen. His jaw tightened until the muscle jumped beneath his ear. Daniel Hayes read those emails and did nothing. And then in July, he called my father into his office and told him his performance had been unsatisfactory and his employment was terminated effective immediately. Lucas reached into the box and pulled out a smaller notebook, spiral-bound, the cover worn soft with handling. He set it on top of the reports. My father kept a handwritten log of every meeting, every phone call, every conversation related to the project. Dates, times, who said what. He didn't trust email. Lucas pressed his palm briefly against the cover. There are 6 entries about conversations with Daniel Hayes. The last one is dated July 12th, 2 days before he was fired. My father wrote, Hayes told me the matter was closed and I should consider carefully what I chose to do next. The deliberate vagueness of that phrase, consider carefully what you choose to do next, hit me the way those things do when you recognize them for what they are. Not a threat specific enough to report, just specific enough to understand. After he was let go, Lucas continued. Daniel called me in. I was still on the project at that point, junior enough that nobody had thought to remove me yet. He looked at me steadily. He said if I filed any complaints or contacted any regulatory agencies, he would make sure I never worked in construction in California again. He had the connections to do it, and we both knew it. But you kept the box, I said. My father spent 11 months trying to do things the right way, Lucas said. The least I could do was keep the evidence that he tried. I looked at the notebook, then at Lucas. There was something I needed to ask, something that had been sitting at the edge of my mind since Arthur handed me the address in Culver City, a question I had not fully formed until this moment. Before Meridian, I said. What projects were you on? Lucas frowned slightly at the shift. A few, the Glendale commercial expansion mostly, 2 years ending in 2009. My chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with anger. Glendale, I said. The Eastview Mall project. Lucas looked at me more carefully now. Yes. There was a scaffolding collapse, I said. Spring of 2009. A teenage girl was trapped in the debris. Something changed in Lucas's face, a recognition moving through it slowly, the way light changes when a cloud shifts. He straightened in his chair. His hands, which had been resting on the table, went very still. She had a red jacket on, he said quietly. My voice when it came was not entirely steady. She was 16 years old. She is my daughter. Lucas stared at me across the table. His eyes were bright and his jaw was working, and he pressed his lips together hard, the way a man does when something has landed so squarely that he needs a moment before he trusts himself to respond. I never knew her name, he said finally. I looked afterward. There was nothing in the news. We kept it quiet, I said. She was a minor. I spent 3 years trying to find the person who pulled her out. I stopped, cleared my throat. I stopped looking because I ran out of places to look. Lucas reached out and picked up his father's notebook from the table. He held it in both hands, looking down at it, and I watched his chest rise and fall once deeply before he looked back up at me. My father always said a good engineer accounts for every variable, Lucas said, every single one. His voice was rough at the edges now, the careful flatness of earlier entirely gone. I don't think either of us accounted for this one. He set the notebook in my hands. Take it, he said. Take all of it. And tell me what you need me to do. Emily answered the door on the second knock, still in her Saturday morning clothes, an old university sweatshirt, hair pulled back, a coffee mug in her hand that she had clearly been holding for warmth rather than drinking. She took one look at my face and stepped back without a word of greeting. Come in, Dad, she said. I'll get you a cup. The kitchen in Emily's house on Micheltorena Street had always been the room that felt most like her. Plants on the windowsill, a stack of art books on the counter that never quite made it back to the shelf, and the ceramic rooster napkin holder her grandmother had given her as a housewarming gift that Emily kept because she said it made her smile every morning, even when nothing else did. Daniel had tried to throw it out twice. Emily had retrieved it both times without comment. I sat down at the kitchen table. Emily set a mug in front of me and sat across from me, pulling her knees up to her chest in the chair, the way she had done since she was a child, and she looked at me with the patient, careful expression of a woman who had learned that, when her father showed up unannounced on a Saturday morning, she should listen first and ask questions after. "Daniel's at Riviera," she said. "He won't be back until after 2. "I know," I said. "I need to tell you some things, Emily. Some of them are going to be hard to hear." She set her mug down. Her hands wrapped around it even after it was on the table. Her fingers interlaced the knuckles, whitening slightly. "Okay," she said. "Tell me." I started with Lucas Reed. Not with Daniel, not with the bridge, with Lucas. With a construction site in Glendale in the spring of 2009, and a young man in a blue work shirt who had gone into a debris field without waiting to be told it was safe, and a 16-year-old girl in a red jacket who had come out of it because of him. Emily went very still. Her coffee mug stayed on the table. Her hands, which had been wrapped around it, slowly came apart. She pressed one palm flat against the table surface and the other against her sternum over her heart, and she stared at me with her eyes wide and filling fast. "That was him," she said. It was not a question. Her voice was barely above a whisper, cracked at the edges. "Dad, that was him." "That was him," I said. She made a sound that was not quite a sob and not quite a laugh, something in between the sound of a person receiving news so unexpected that the emotional response doesn't know which direction to go. She pressed her fingers against her mouth and held them there, her eyes spilling over the tears running fast and quiet down her face. "I tried to find him," she said against her fingers. "After I asked you, I asked Mom, I asked the site manager. Nobody could tell me a name." "I know," I said. "I tried too, for 3 years." She took a long, shaking breath and lowered her hand from her mouth and looked at me with wet eyes and a chin that was trembling but set. "Tell me the rest," she said. "Tell me why you're really here." So I told her the rest. I told her about the Rosario's bakery, about the 2 officers and what I had heard. I told her about the vendor substitution and the deleted emails and Harold Reed and what Daniel had done to him. I told her about the $4.2 million and Richard Holt's signature and the templates with my name on them. I told her everything in the same order I had assembled it over the past 4 days, and I watched her face change as I spoke, not collapsing, not breaking apart, but changing the way a landscape changes when the light shifts, revealing contours that had always been there but were only now becoming visible. When I finished, Emily got up from the table. She walked to the kitchen window and stood looking out at the backyard for a moment, her arms crossed tight over her chest, her shoulders rigid. Then she walked out of the kitchen entirely. I heard her footsteps going down the hall, a closet door opening, a pause. She came back carrying a phone, older model. The screen cracked across the lower right corner. She set it on the table in front of me and sat down. 6 months ago," she said. Her voice was steady now, in the way that things are steady after the worst of the shaking has passed. "I picked up Daniel's phone by mistake, same case as mine. I saw a message before I realized it wasn't my phone." She looked at the cracked screen. "I asked him about it. He said it was a business conversation I didn't have the context for. He said I was reading it wrong." She pressed her lips together. "I chose to believe him." "Emily, I chose to believe him," she said again, more firmly this time, as though she needed to say it a second time to make sure she wasn't softening it for either of us. "That was my decision. I'm not asking you to tell me it wasn't." She reached across the table and turned the phone on. The cracked screen lit up. She navigated to a photo album and turned it to face me. 7 screenshots. Daniel's messages to an unsaved number, photographed at an angle, the images slightly blurred at the edges, the way photographs taken quickly in poor light always are. I picked the phone up and read the first one. Daniel had written, "The old man is losing his grip. We just need to give it one more push." The response: "After the ceremony we move." The date on the message was 2 weeks before the meridian crossing ribbon cutting. My chest contracted so sharply that I had to set the phone down. I pressed both hands flat on the table and breathed through it one slow breath, while the full weight of those 2 sentences settled into place. After the ceremony, we move. They had planned it, not improvised it, not responded to circumstances, planned it. The bridge opening had not been a milestone. It had been a starting gun. "The number it was sent to," I said when I could trust my voice. Do you still have it? Emily reached over and scrolled to the contact field. An unsaved number. Area code 202. Washington, I said. I thought the same thing, Emily said. I didn't know what to do with it. I still don't. I need to have it confirmed, I said. I have someone who may be able to identify it. I set the phone down between us. Can I take this? Emily looked at the phone for a moment, at the cracked screen, at the screenshots that represented 6 months of a choice she had made, and was only now fully understanding the cost of. Then she looked up at me, and her eyes were dry now, and very clear. Take it, she said. And Dad. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine, gripping it hard, her fingers pressing into the back of my hand with a strength that surprised me. I want to be there when it happens. Whatever it is, I want to be in the room. I looked at my daughter at the set of her jaw, and the clarity in her eyes, and the hand holding mine, with a grip that had nothing uncertain in it, and I felt something shift inside my chest. Not relief exactly. Something older and more specific than that. The particular feeling of discovering that the person you raised turned out to be exactly who you hoped they were. I'll find a way, I said. She nodded, once released my hand and picked up her coffee mug. It had gone cold, but she drank from it anyway because some gestures are about composure rather than coffee. Go, she said. You have work to do. By 2 p.m, all 3 of them were at the table in my back office, Maggie with her envelope, Lucas with his father's box, and me with Marcus Webb's certified report, and the financial documents Arthur had helped me organize into a sequence that told the story in the order a federal investigator would need to hear it. I had called Lucas from the car outside Emily's house. He had arrived at Bel Air 40 minutes later, with the cardboard box under one arm and Harold's spiral notebook tucked into his jacket pocket. Maggie had come in through the garden gate the way I had asked her to, avoiding the front of the property on the off chance that Daniel had eyes on the neighborhood. It was probably overcautious. I had stopped being interested in probably 2 days ago. Lucas looked at Maggie when she came in. Maggie looked at Lucas. Neither of them had met before, but they recognized each other in the way that people recognize shared experience, the particular look of someone who has been carrying the same weight in a different pocket. You're Harold's son, Maggie said. It was not a question. Yes, ma'am, Lucas said. Maggie set her envelope on the table and put her hand briefly on top of his, just for a moment. Then she sat down and opened the envelope, and they got to work. We spent 90 minutes going through everything. Lucas laid out his father's reports in chronological order, May through September 2023, 34 warnings in 11 months, each one more detailed and more urgent than the last. Maggie cross-referenced the engineering timeline against the financial records, matching the dates of Harold's reports to the dates of the corresponding vendor payments. Every time Harold had flagged a material that did not meet spec, the payment to the replacement supplier had been processed within 2 weeks. He knew, Lucas said, pressing his finger against one of the payment dates. His jaw was tight, his voice controlled in that way it got, when he was keeping something in by force. Every single time my father sent a warning, Daniel knew exactly what was being flagged and moved the money anyway. He wasn't ignoring the reports. Maggie said, her reading glasses pushed up on her forehead. He was reading them as a checklist. The room went sharp and quiet at that. I felt it land on all 3 of us at once, the particular nausea of understanding something that cannot be ununderstood. Daniel had not dismissed Harold's warnings out of arrogance or negligence. He had used them to track which material substitutions had been noticed, which gaps needed to be closed, which paper trails needed to be tidied, before anyone official started asking questions. I put Arthur on speakerphone at 3:30. He listened to our summary without interrupting. When we finished, he was quiet for 4 seconds, I counted, because Arthur's silences always had weight, and that one was heavier than most. What you have, he said finally, is sufficient to compel a federal investigation. The financial records establish wire fraud across state lines. The engineering documentation establishes knowing endangerment. The forensic report establishes deliberate concealment. And the templates with William's name establish premeditation of obstruction. A pause. What you do not have is testimony from someone who was inside the decision-making process, someone who can speak to intent, not just outcome. Vanessa Cole, I said. She processed the final transfers, Maggie confirmed. The ones I couldn't fully account for in my records. If anyone knows where the last of the money went, it's her. She also received Daniel's direct instructions, I said, in writing according to what I was told. I thought of the USB drive I had not yet seen sitting somewhere in Vanessa Cole's possession, 2 months of self-preservation, compressed into a portable drive the size of a thumb. Lucas leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "Do you think she'll talk?" "I think," I said carefully, "that she has more reason to talk than she does to stay quiet. Daniel has already told her that if this falls apart, she falls with it. What she doesn't know yet is that we can offer her something Daniel can't." "Which is what?" Lucas asked. "A version of this story where she's a witness rather than a defendant." Arthur cleared his throat on the phone. "That is not a promise you can make, William. That determination belongs to the prosecutors." "I know," I said, "but it's a conversation worth having." Arthur agreed. He told us to document everything we had discussed today with signed and dated declarations from both Lucas and Maggie before Monday. He told me to approach Vanessa carefully and in a neutral location. He told all 3 of us not to contact anyone at the company or say a word to anyone outside this room until he had spoken to his contact at the FBI field office in Westwood. After I ended the call, the 3 of us sat at the table for a moment. Outside through the office window, the afternoon had turned golden, the way LA afternoons do in late September, the light going warm and horizontal across the garden. The roses were still blooming along the back fence. Lucas looked at the stacks of paper on the table, his father's work, Maggie's records, my documents, and then he looked at me with an expression I recognized. The look of a man who has been fighting alone for long enough that the presence of other people fighting alongside him feels like something he has to consciously accept as real. "My father tried to do this by himself," Lucas said. His voice was rough at the edges. "He thought if he just documented enough, if he was thorough enough, the system would respond." He exhaled hard through his nose. He was thorough enough. The system just wasn't paying attention. Maggie looked at him across the table. "It's paying attention now," she said. Lucas nodded once. His throat moved as he swallowed. I stood up and started gathering the documents back into their respective folders. "I'll contact Vanessa tonight," I said. "She suggested a meeting this week. I'll push for tomorrow." "And if she won't meet?" Maggie asked. "Then we go to Arthur on Monday with what we have, and we let the federal process do what it's designed to do." I picked up Harold's spiral notebook from the corner of the table. "But I don't think she'll say no. I think Vanessa Cole has been waiting for someone to give her a reason to make the right choice." I set the notebook carefully on top of the box. "I'm going to try to be that reason." I walked them both out through the garden gate at 5:15. Lucas shook my hand at the bottom of the path, a firm, brief grip, the handshake of a man who had decided something and was not going back on it. Maggie touched my arm as she passed just briefly, just enough. I went back inside and stood in the office and looked at the table where 35 years of careful work and 4 days of harder work were sitting in a set of labeled folders. Then I picked up my phone and composed a text message to a number I had pulled from the company's executive directory that afternoon while no one was watching. "Ms. Cole, this is William Carter. I think we should talk. I believe we may want the same thing." I sent it before I could think too hard about whether it was the right move, because sometimes the right move and the necessary move are the same thing, and the only way to know is to make it. The reply came 11 minutes later. 1 line. "Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. You choose the place." Vanessa Cole was already at the table when I walked into the coffee shop on Main Street in Santa Monica at 1:58 Sunday afternoon. She had chosen a corner table with her back to the wall and a clear line of sight to both the front door and the service counter, the seating choice of someone who had spent the past several months thinking carefully about who might be watching. She was younger than her title suggested. 35 maybe, with the kind of composed stillness that reads as confidence until you look closely enough to see what it is actually costing her. Her coffee was untouched. Her hands were in her lap. She watched me cross the room with an expression that gave away nothing, which told me more than an expression would have. I sat down across from her. "Thank you for coming," I said. "I haven't decided yet what I'm doing here," she said. Her voice was even carefully modulated, the voice of a woman who had been in enough difficult rooms to know that the first person to show their hand loses. "I wanted to hear what you have to say before I made that determination." "That's fair," I said. "Then I'll be direct. I know about the Holt & Associates transfers. I know about the deleted engineering reports. I know about the templates Daniel prepared with my name on them. And I know that you processed the final payment authorizations, the ones that don't appear in Maggie Torres's records because they were routed through a separate account you managed directly. Something moved across Vanessa's face, not surprise, but the particular expression of someone who has been dreading a specific conversation for long enough that its arrival brings a complicated kind of relief. Her hands came up from her lap, and she placed them flat on the table, and I noticed that her fingers were not entirely steady. "How much do you know about how I got involved?" she asked. "Tell me," I said. She looked at her coffee cup for a moment. Then she began. She had joined Carter Infrastructure 2 years ago as a senior executive assistant, promoted to Daniel's direct team 6 months in. In the beginning, she said the work was straightforward: scheduling correspondence, vendor coordination. Daniel was demanding but fair. She had thought she was building something. The first time he asked me to process a payment outside the standard authorization chain, he told me it was a confidentiality matter, Vanessa said. A sensitive vendor relationship that needed to stay below the board's visibility threshold for competitive reasons. She pressed her lips together briefly. I processed it. I should have asked more questions. I didn't. "When did you realize it was more than that?" I asked. "When the bridge fell," she said flatly. "When I watched the news and I thought about the payment routing I had been doing for months, and I understood what I had been part of." Her jaw tightened. "I went to Daniel the next morning. I told him I wanted out. I told him I wouldn't process anything else, and I was considering going to the board." "What did he say?" Vanessa exhaled through her nose a short, sharp sound that contained a great deal of compressed history. "He was very calm about it. He pulled up a file on his laptop, and he turned it toward me. It was a summary document, dates, amounts, my name on every authorization. He said if anyone looked at the payment records, the person who had processed them was me. He said his own involvement was structured in a way that would be very difficult to trace." She looked at me steadily. "He said he hoped I would think carefully about my next steps. The same language he had used with Harold Reed. Consider carefully what you choose to do next. A template for threats the same as the templates he had prepared to bury me." "That was when I started keeping records," Vanessa said. "I went back through everything I had processed, and I copied it. Every email where he gave me instructions, every authorization request, every response I sent." She reached into her bag and set a USB drive on the table between us. Small gray, the kind that could sit in a coat pocket and be mistaken for nothing at all. 2 months of documentation. His words, not mine. Every instruction in writing. I looked at the drive. I did not pick it up yet. "There's something I need to ask you," I said. "The number Daniel used to communicate with Richard Holt, a number with a 202 area code. Did you ever have contact with that number?" Vanessa's expression shifted, a small, specific tightening around the eyes. "Once," she said. "About 4 months ago. Daniel asked me to forward a message to that number when his own phone was being serviced. I called from the office line." She paused. "A man answered. Daniel's name was mentioned. The man said he understood and would be in touch." Another pause. "His voice was on the news 2 weeks later, a committee hearing on infrastructure funding." "Richard Holt," I said. "Richard Holt," she confirmed. The confirmation settled into the room with a weight that made the air feel different. The number on Emily's phone, the signature on the payment authorizations, the voice on the committee hearing, all of it connecting now into something that had a shape and a name and a set of federal statutes attached to it. I picked up the USB drive. "Vanessa," I said, "I want to be honest with you about what I can and cannot offer. I can't make you promises about prosecutorial decisions that belongs to the United States Attorney's Office, not to me. What I can tell you is that my attorney is in contact with the FBI field office in Westwood, and that the difference between being a witness and being a defendant in a case like this is largely determined by who comes forward first and how completely they cooperate." Vanessa looked at the drive in my hand. Her jaw was set and her eyes were dry, but there was something behind them that had been there since I sat down. A pressure, the specific pressure of someone who has been holding a decision in place by sheer force of will for longer than any decision should have to be held. "I didn't know anyone was going to get hurt," she said. Her voice was quieter now, the careful modulation finally giving way to something underneath it. "I want you to know that. I know it doesn't change what happened, but I need you to know it." "I believe you," I said. She closed her eyes for a moment, just long enough to take one breath that was different from all the others. Then she opened them and looked at me with an expression that had something new in it. Not relief exactly. Something more like the feeling of putting down a weight you have been carrying so long, You forgot what your arms felt like without it. What happens now? She asked. Now, I said, you call your own attorney, tonight, before you do anything else. Tell them everything you just told me and show them what's on that drive. Let them advise you on the next steps. I set a card on the table, Arthur's card, his personal number written on the back. If you need a referral, Arthur Simmons can point you towards someone who handles federal cooperation agreements. Vanessa picked up the card and looked at it for a moment. Then she put it in her bag. There's one more thing, she said as I started to stand. Daniel knows someone has been pulling records. He found out Wednesday from someone in the IT department who flagged the access log inquiry. She looked at me directly. He doesn't know it's you specifically, but he's been making calls to the 3 board members, to Holt. Her voice dropped. He's moving Mr. Carter. Whatever you're planning, he's already planning the same thing. I stood up fully and put the USB drive in my jacket pocket. Thank you, I said, for the drive, for the information, for coming. Vanessa looked up at me from the table. The composure was back in place, but it sat differently now, less like armor and more like something she had chosen to wear. I'm not doing this for noble reasons, she said. I want you to know that too. Noble reasons are overrated, I said. Doing the right thing for complicated reasons still counts. I left her at the corner table with her untouched coffee and walked out into the Santa Monica afternoon, the USB drive in my pocket and one day left, before everything I had spent a week building would either hold or it wouldn't. They arrived within 20 minutes of each other. Lucas first, then Maggie, then Vanessa, who had called her own attorney from the parking lot in Santa Monica before she drove to Bel Air, which was exactly what I had asked her to do and which told me something useful about how she operated when given clear instructions and a reason to follow them. I had set up the back office with 4 chairs around the table and the documents organized into 4 labeled sections. Arthur joined by phone at 7. Vanessa plugged the USB into my laptop and we went through the contents together. 41 emails, 11 payment authorization records, and 3 internal memos that Daniel had apparently dictated and then forgotten she had been copied on. At this, Arthur said when we finished the walkthrough, is the inside account. Combined with what you already have, this is a complete picture. A pause. I spoke to my contact at the Westwood field office this afternoon. They are prepared to receive a formal referral Monday morning. What happens after that is their process, not ours, but the door is open. The room felt different after he said it, not lighter exactly. The weight of what we had spent a week assembling did not simply lift, but more solid somehow, the way a structure feels when the last piece of load-bearing material is finally in place. We spent another hour organizing the documents into a sequence Arthur had specified: financial records first, then engineering, then the forensic report, then the email correspondence with Daniel's attorney, then Vanessa's USB contents. Maggie labeled each section in her careful block handwriting. Lucas checked the engineering timeline against the payment dates one final time, running his finger down the columns his father had built entry by entry over 11 months. At 9:15, my phone buzzed on the desk. A text from Emily. Daniel came home early. He's been on the phone since he walked in. Won't tell me who with. I showed it to the table. Nobody needed to say what it meant. We have everything we need, Arthur said from the speaker. Do not add anything else tonight. Do not contact anyone. Get some rest. I walked Maggie and Lucas out through the garden at 10. Before they left, both Lucas and Maggie had signed and dated the declarations Arthur had asked for, 2 pages each witnessed by Arthur's colleague over the phone, documenting everything they had told me over the past 3 days. Vanessa left separately through the front, her attorney's number saved in her phone, and the weight in her expression shifted to something I recognized as a particular kind of resolve, not comfortable, not clean, but decided. I was closing the garden gate when my phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. A man's voice, smooth, unhurried, the voice of someone paid specifically to sound reasonable. Mr. Carter, I'm calling on behalf of a mutual acquaintance. He wanted me to convey that it would be in everyone's interest to speak before tomorrow's meeting. He believes a conversation could resolve certain misunderstandings before they become something more difficult to manage. I listened to the full sentence. Then I said, tell your mutual acquaintance that, if he wants to talk, he knows where the meeting is. 40 floors above the lobby, starting at 10 o'clock Monday morning. I ended the call. I stood in the garden for a moment, the night air coming down off the canyon, the city lights spread across the basin below. The roses along the back fence had closed for the night, folded into themselves in the dark, the way things do when they have no more light to work with and are simply waiting for morning. I went inside and locked the office and went upstairs. I did not sleep well, but I slept. The email arrived at 6:15 in the morning, before I had finished making coffee. It was from the chairman of the board, a formal man named Gerald Whitmore, who had been with the company since the early years, and who I had always respected for his precision and his reluctance to move on anything until he understood it completely. The subject line read, "Emergency Session, Monday 10 Warzuro AM." The body of the email was 4 sentences. An emergency shareholder petition had been filed. 3 major investors had signed. The petition requested my temporary suspension from executive authority, pending an internal review of my management decisions during the Meridian Crossing project. I was asked to attend the session and respond to the petition in person. I read it twice. Then I set my coffee down on the counter and stood very still for a moment, my hands braced on the edge of the granite, looking at the words on the screen. The petition language was precise, specific. It alleged that I had been made aware of structural concerns during the Meridian Crossing construction phase, and had chosen to proceed with the project completion without disclosing those concerns to the board or to regulatory authorities. It cited decisions I had never made, communications I had never sent, an assigned executive override document authorizing the vendor substitutions, a document with my name on it that I had never seen before today and had certainly never signed. Daniel had deployed the templates. The templates Marcus had found on the backup server, the ones prepared in August of 2023, with my name already typed into every signature line, they were in the petition, filed with the board, presented as evidence that I had orchestrated everything the investigation was supposed to uncover. The late-night call had not been an offer to talk. It had been a distraction, something to keep me off balance and focused on the wrong door, while he filed the petition through the right one. My jaw tightened until I felt the pressure in my back teeth. I breathed through it. 3 hours and 45 minutes. That was what I had between this moment and the meeting. I called Lucas first. He answered on the second ring. "It's happening this morning," I said. 10 o'clock, Daniel filed a petition with the board. Last night he's used the forged documents. My name is on an authorization I never signed. A sharp intake of breath on the line. Then, "I'll be at the building at 9. What do I bring?" "Everything I said. All of it." I called Maggie next. She picked up before the first ring had finished, which told me she had been awake and waiting. "I know," she said before I could speak. "Gerald Whitmore's assistant called me 20 minutes ago to confirm I would be available for the session." Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it, a tightness, the sound of someone sitting very straight in a chair and holding themselves there by force. "William, Daniel told the board that I helped him, that I was the one who structured the financial routing." The words hit me like something physical. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles ached. "That is not true," I said. "I know it is not true," Maggie said. "But it is what the petition says, and the petition has 3 signatures on it from people who control enough shares to make Gerald Whitmore take it seriously." A pause, short and controlled. "I am not frightened. I want you to know that. I am furious, which is entirely different." "Good," I said. "Stay furious. I'll see you at 9. I called Arthur at 6:40. He had already seen the petition. Someone at the board level had forwarded it to him within the hour of filing, which told me that not everyone in that room was aligned with Daniel's version of events. "The forged documents are the problem," Arthur said without preamble. "The petition presents them as authenticated. We need Marcus Webb's forensic report in that room, the one establishing that those templates were created in August of 2023, 3 months before the bridge opened on a device registered to Daniel Hayes. That report doesn't just contradict the petition, it proves the petition itself is based on fabricated evidence." "It'll be in the room," I said. "William." Arthur's voice changed slightly, not softer but more deliberate. "This morning is going to be uncomfortable. Daniel has had longer to prepare for this meeting than you have. He will be confident, and he will be organized, and he will have answers for everything you put in front of him. What he will not have is a response to what he doesn't know is coming." A pause. "Is Emily still planning to be there?" "She said she wanted to be in the room," I said. "I told her I'd find a way." "Bring her," Arthur said. "Board sessions allow for executive family members to attend as observers when the matter concerns family-held interests. The Carter Family Trust still holds 19% of the company. Emily qualifies." Another pause. "And William, whatever happens in that room this morning, let the documents speak first. Don't go in angry, go in prepared. I ended the call at 6:58 and stood at the kitchen window, looking out at the Bel Air, mourning the canyon going gold in the early light, the city still quiet below. My coffee was cold. I did not bother reheating it. I called Emily last. The phone rang 4 times, which was 3 more than usual, and when she answered, her voice had the particular flatness of someone who has not slept and is not pretending otherwise. "Dad," she said. "He filed the petition last night," I said. "Meeting is at 10. I need you there, Emily. Arthur says the family trust qualifies you as an observer. Can you come?" A silence on the line, brief the length of one deliberate breath. "Daniel left at 5:30 this morning," she said. "He took his briefcase and his laptop, and he didn't say where he was going." Her voice was steady, but there was something moving underneath it, something that had been held in place for 6 months and was now finally beginning to come loose. I've been sitting here since then trying to decide if I'm angry or just very, very tired. "You can be both," I said. "Yes," she said. "I suppose I can." Another breath. "I'll be there at 9:30, and Dad." A pause. "I have the phone, the old one. I've been carrying it since Saturday." "I know," I said. "Bring it." I sent one final message before I put the phone away to Vanessa, forwarding the meeting time and the address and 3 words from Arthur: "Your presence matters." I put my own phone in my jacket pocket and went upstairs to find a suit, not the one I wore to ribbon cuttings and industry dinners, and the kind of occasions where the clothes were meant to signal arrival. The older one, the charcoal gray that Elena had always said, made me look like someone who had already won whatever argument he was about to have. I put it on, straightened the tie in the mirror, and went downstairs. There was work left to do. 3 hours and 12 minutes of it. The conference room on the 40th floor had 12 chairs around the table, and windows that ran floor to ceiling on 2 sides, the kind of room designed to make whoever stood at the head of it feel like the city below was listening. At 9:58, Daniel Hayes was standing at that head, his presentation loaded on the screen behind him, his expression carrying the specific confidence of a man who is prepared for every variable he can imagine and has stopped believing there are any he hasn't. I watched him through the glass panel beside the door for a moment before I went in. He looked good. Rested, composed, the kind of controlled that comes from certainty rather than effort. He had 12 people in that room, including Gerald Whitmore at the far end of the table, and he was talking to all of them at once with the ease of someone who had rehearsed this morning so many times it had become muscle memory. I pushed open the door. The room shifted the moment I walked in, not dramatically, not all at once, but in the way a room shifts when something unexpected enters it and everyone recalibrates without quite knowing why. Daniel stopped mid-sentence. His eyes found me immediately, and in the half-second before his expression reassembled itself, I saw something move across his face that I had never seen there before. He was not certain anymore. Lucas came in behind me, carrying the cardboard box under one arm and Harold's spiral notebook in his hand. Maggie came in after him, her envelope held against her chest. Her chin lifted at the particular angle that I had come to understand meant she had made her peace with whatever was about to happen and was not going to be moved from it. Daniel's composure came back quickly. He was good at that. "William," he said. His voice was measured, even warm, the voice of a man performing reasonableness for an audience. "I understand this is difficult, but the board has a responsibility to—" "Sit down, Daniel," Gerald Whitmore said from the end of the table. Not unkindly, just finally. Daniel sat. I set Marcus Webb's forensic report on the table first. Not the financial records, not Harold's engineering files, the forensic report. The one that established with chain of custody documentation and a certified expert signature that the executive override documents in Daniel's petition had been created in August of 2023 on a device registered to Daniel Hayes 3 months before the bridge opened, and that the signature bearing my name had never appeared in any authenticated company record prior to their submission to the board 48 hours ago. I set it down and I did not say anything. I let Gerald Whitmore pick it up and start reading. Lucas set Harold's reports on the table, in a stack organized chronologically, each one tabbed at the relevant sections. "My name is Lucas Reed," he said, and his voice was steady in the way his father's handwriting was steady, precise, deliberate, built to last. "I am a structural engineer and the son of Harold Reed, who was senior structural engineer on the Meridian Crossing project until he was terminated by Daniel Hayes in July of 2023. These are my father's original reports, 34 warnings sent to Mr. Hayes over 11 months. I am prepared to testify to their authenticity and to the circumstances of my father's termination. Maggie set her envelope on the table without a word and took her seat. Daniel's attorney, a man I didn't recognize brought in overnight, leaned forward and started to speak. Daniel put a hand on his arm and stopped him. He was looking at the forensic report in Gerald Whitmore's hands with an expression that was working very hard to stay neutral and not quite managing it. He started talking, slowly at first, then faster, building an alternative explanation, layering qualifications on top of each other, the specific verbal architecture of a man constructing a wall as quickly as he can because he can feel the water rising. He challenged the forensic methodology. He questioned Lucas's standing. He suggested Maggie's records were incomplete because she had been operating outside her authorized scope. He was good at it. I had always known he was good at it. And then the door opened for the second time. Emily walked in alone. She was wearing a dark blazer over a white shirt, her hair pulled back, and she moved across the room with the steady, deliberate walk of a woman who has made a decision she is not going to revisit. She did not look at Daniel when she came in. She looked at the screen at the head of the table. She crossed to the presentation terminal, unplugged Daniel's laptop, and plugged in the old phone with the cracked screen. Her hands were completely steady. I watched them and felt something expand in my chest that I did not have a name for. The screenshots appeared on the screen. Daniel's words, the unsaved number with the Washington area code, the date 2 weeks before the ribbon cutting. The old man is losing his grip. We just need to give it one more push. After the ceremony, we move. The room went completely still. Emily turned from the screen and looked at Daniel for the first time since she had walked in. She looked at him the way you look at something you have been trying not to see clearly for a very long time, and are now seeing finally with a particular exhausted clarity that comes after the effort of not seeing is no longer worth making. "I chose to believe you," she said. Her voice did not shake. It was the steadiest thing in the room. "When I found those messages 6 months ago and you told me I was reading them wrong, I chose to believe you, because I wanted to." She stopped, and the pause was not emptiness. It was weight. The weight of 6 months compressed into a breath. "That was the biggest mistake I have ever made." Daniel opened his mouth. He closed it again. For the first time in the years I had known him, Daniel Hayes had nothing to say. Not because he hadn't prepared an answer. I was certain he had prepared answers for everything. But Emily was not a document he could challenge, or a witness he could discredit, or a version of events he could reframe. She was his wife standing in front of 12 people, and what she had just said was the only thing in the room that no attorney and no forensic methodology and no carefully constructed petition could do anything about. The door opened a third time. Vanessa Cole walked in. She went directly to Gerald Whitmore's end of the table and set the USB drive in front of him. "My name is Vanessa Cole," she said. "I was Mr. Hayes' executive assistant. I am cooperating with the federal investigation that will be opened by the FBI's Westwood field office this morning. That drive contains 41 emails and 11 payment authorizations documenting Mr. Hayes' direct instructions in the financial transactions at issue. I have retained counsel, and I am prepared to provide full testimony." Gerald Whitmore set down Marcus Webb's forensic report. He looked at Daniel. Then he picked up the phone in front of him and said 3 words to whoever answered. "Get me counsel." I looked at Daniel across the table. He was looking at his hands. Not at Vanessa, not at Emily, not at me. At his hands the way a man looks when the room he built around himself has just come apart. And he is trying to understand how the pieces got from where they were to where they are now. I leaned forward slightly, my voice low enough that only he could hear it across the table. Then I said it again louder for the room. "You didn't just damage a bridge, Daniel. You betrayed every person who spent their life building something that was supposed to matter." Gerald Whitmore set down his phone. "Mr. Hayes," he said, "I'm going to ask you to remain in the room until our legal team arrives. You are, of course, free to consult with your own counsel in the interim." He looked around the table. "This session is in recess." Daniel did not stand up. He sat at the head of the table in the room he had chosen for this morning, in the chair he had been certain would confirm everything he had planned, and he did not move. He had nowhere to go. The board session reconvened at 2 in the afternoon without Daniel in the room. Arthur had arrived at 11:30 with 2 colleagues from his firm and a representative from the FBI's Westwood field office who sat in the corner and took notes and said very little, which was exactly what you wanted from someone in that role on a morning like this one. The board's own legal team spent 3 hours reviewing the forensic report, Maggie's financial records, Harold's engineering files, and the contents of Vanessa's USB drive. Gerald Whitmore asked questions in the careful, methodical way that had always made him good at his job, and the answers he received did not leave room for alternative interpretations. At 2:15, the board voted to suspend Daniel Hayes from all executive functions, effective immediately. His access credentials were revoked before the vote had finished being counted. The company's general counsel was directed to preserve all records related to the Meridian Crossing project and to cooperate fully with federal and state authorities. Arthur pulled me aside in the hallway afterward. California Attorney General's office will handle the state charges, he said. Wire fraud, construction, fraud, falsification of records, embezzlement. Those will take time, these cases always do. But the documentary evidence is strong enough that I would be surprised if it went to trial rather than a plea. He paused. Richard Holt is a separate matter. His involvement touches federal bribery statutes and honest services fraud. That goes to DOJ, not Sacramento. The FBI contact this morning confirmed they are opening a parallel inquiry. What about his shares? I asked. Daniel's equity in the company. His shares remain his until a court orders otherwise, Arthur said. That will be part of the civil proceedings that follow the criminal case. It is not a fast process, but it is a process that now exists, which is more than it did 72 hours ago. He looked at me with the particular expression of a man who has seen a great many things go wrong in his career and is taking quiet satisfaction in watching one of them go right. You did good work this week, William. I did not know what to say to that, so I said nothing, which Arthur understood. Maggie found me near the elevator at 3 o'clock. She had her coat on and her bag over her shoulder. The envelope tucked under her arm, she had not let go of it all day, I realized, even after its contents had been entered into the official record. Arthur confirmed it this morning, she said, before I could ask. What Daniel used against me, the accounting error from 5 years ago, qualifies as criminal extortion under California law. I was a victim of that threat, not a participant in the underlying fraud. There will be no action against me. She said it in the same tone she might use to read a quarterly report, precise even without excess. But her eyes were bright, and she pressed her lips together for just a moment before she continued. I want you to know something, William. In 20 years, I have never doubted that working for this company was the right choice. Not once, not even this year. She straightened the envelope under her arm. I'm glad I stayed. My throat tightened in a way I was not going to examine too closely in a hallway outside a 40th floor conference room. So am I said. Go home, Maggie. Take the rest of the week. She nodded once, touched my arm briefly, and walked to the elevator. I drove to Emily's house at 6:30. She answered the door in the same dark blazer she had worn that morning, though she had taken her hair down and her feet were bare on the hardwood floor, which told me she had been home for a while and had been sitting with everything the day had left behind. She stepped back and let me in without a word, and I followed her to the kitchen. The ceramic rooster napkin holder was on the table. The overhead light was on. There was a pot of tea on the counter that had probably been made an hour ago and gone cold the way things do when you make them for comfort and then forget to drink them. Emily sat down across from me, her hands wrapped around a mug. The mug was cold. She held it anyway. He's been served, she said. His attorney called me at 4. I don't know why I'm not his attorney and I'm not his representative, and I told her that. She looked at her hands. I think she didn't know who else to call. Are you all right? I asked. Emily looked up at me with an expression that was too complicated for a single word to cover something that moved between grief and fury and exhaustion, and something else underneath all of it that I recognized, because I had felt it myself at 6:15 that morning when I read Gerald Whitmore's email and understood that this was the day everything would either break or hold. I don't know yet, she said honestly. I think I won't know for a while. She set the mug down, pressing both palms flat on the table. Can I ask you something? Anything, I said. When you walked into that bakery on Wednesday morning and sat down with your coffee and heard what you heard, she stopped, steadied herself. Were you scared? I thought about it. The honest answer, not the answer a father gives a daughter to make her feel better about the situation. Yes, I said. Not of Daniel specifically, of what it meant, of what I was going to have to find out. I folded my hands on the table, and of finding out I had missed it for so long. Emily nodded slowly as though that answer confirmed something she had already suspected. I missed it too, she said. I missed it, and I knew I was missing it, and I chose to keep missing it because the alternative was... She stopped again. Her jaw tightened. The alternative was this, and this is very hard. Yes, I said. It is. She reached across the table and picked up the ceramic rooster napkin holder, turning it over once in her hands, the way her grandmother used to turn things over when she was thinking. Then she set it back down in its place on the table. He's not going to be in this house anymore, she said. Not a question, not distress, just a fact she was saying out loud for the first time, and testing how it felt to hear it. No, I said. She exhaled long and slow, and from somewhere deep in her chest, the breath of someone releasing something they have been holding so long they had stopped noticing the weight of it. Her eyes filled briefly, and she blinked it back with the same quiet determination she had shown in the conference room that morning, when she plugged in a cracked phone and changed the direction of everything. The people who were hurt on the bridge, she said. The 23. There will be civil proceedings, I said. The company will be responsible. It should have been responsible from the beginning. It will be now. She nodded. Her hands were still on the table and open, no longer gripping anything. Stay for dinner, she said. I looked at my daughter across the kitchen table, at the rooster napkin holder, and the cold pot of tea, and the bare feet on the hardwood floor, and the expression on her face that was sad and tired and clear-eyed all at once. And I felt the particular gratitude of a man who has spent a very hard week doing a necessary thing, and arrived at the end of it, still having the things that matter most. I'll stay, I said. She stood up and went to the stove, and I stayed at the table, and neither of us said anything else for a while because some things do not need to be said to be understood. 3 months after the board session, on a Tuesday morning in December, I drove out to the Meridian Crossing for the first time since the morning I had driven past the empty lot at Rosario's Bakery, and not quite been able to make myself stop. The bridge had been reopened 6 weeks earlier, after a full structural review conducted by an independent engineering firm appointed by Caltrans and the California AG's office jointly. New load-bearing materials installed to the original ASTM A992 specification. New inspection protocols required quarterly for the first 2 years. A formal findings report that named the cause of the original failure in language that did not leave room for the kind of ambiguity that had allowed a closed investigation to stay closed for 11 months. I parked on the access road below the eastern approach and walked up to the pedestrian rail. The morning was cold for Los Angeles mid-50s, the sky a flat pale gray that made everything look very clean and very still. Beneath the bridge, the wash was dry the way it usually was. This time of year, the concrete channel catching the early light at an angle that made it look almost silver. Lucas was already there when I arrived. He was standing with his hands in the pockets of a heavy jacket, looking out at the road surface, the way an engineer looks at a structure, not casually, but with the specific attention of someone who is reading what they see, rather than just watching it. He heard me coming and turned. "You were here before me," I said. "I wanted to walk the span first," he said. "Before you got here. How does it look?" He was quiet for a moment, his eyes moving back to the road surface, the cables, the expansion joints at the eastern end where the original design had specified a tolerance that the replacement materials had finally correctly met. "It looks like what it was supposed to look like," he said. "Before, we stood at the rail and watched the morning traffic move across. A school bus, orange and deliberate. A delivery truck with a company name I didn't recognize. A woman in a silver sedan with a child visible in the back seat. The child pressed against the window looking at something outside that only children find worth looking at in the early morning. The bridge held all of them the way it had always been designed to hold them, with the unhurried certainty of a thing built correctly and maintained honestly. "My father's foundation specifications are still in place," Lucas said. He was looking at the western abutment where the bridge met the hillside. "The pilings, the footings, the anchor geometry, all original. The firm that did the structural review confirmed it. Harold Reed's foundation work was exactly right. It was everything above it that someone decided to compromise." I put my hands on the rail. The steel was cold under my palms, solid and real, in the specific way that things are real when they have been tested and held. "I owe your father something I can never repay," I said. Lucas turned his head and looked at me. "He wasn't doing it for repayment," he said. "He was doing it because it was his name on the drawings, because there were going to be people on this bridge and he was one of the people responsible for whether it held." He paused. "That's all he thought it was, just doing the job right. That's more than most people manage. I said. Lucas half smiled, a small, tired expression that carried the particular weight of someone who has been through enough to find simple observations unexpectedly moving. He would have liked that you said that, he said. He would have been too professional to say so, but he would have liked it. The school bus had crossed and disappeared around the bend to the south. The delivery truck was gone. The woman in the silver sedan was already a quarter-mile away. Her child probably still looking at something out the window already somewhere else. Sacramento, I said. The new project. I start after the new year, Lucas said. Highway overpass, not as large as this one, but the soil conditions are more complicated. Ground-penetrating radar survey first, then the foundation design. He glanced at me. I'm taking my father's approach. Document everything, twice. Good, I said. A container truck came across from the west, heavy-loaded, exactly the kind of vehicle that had been part of the load calculation for the original design. I watched it cross. The bridge did not shift under it. It did not flex in any way that was visible from where we stood. It simply held the way things hold when they have been built to hold, and the people who built them told the truth about what they were doing. I thought about Harold Reed standing at a drafting table, or more likely at a computer screen, the way engineers work now, running load calculations on a structure that someone else was quietly undermining, sending email after email into a silence that turned out not to be silence at all, but a very specific and deliberate decision not to respond. I thought about the 11 months of trying, and the way trying when the system is arranged against it can look from the outside like failure. It was not failure. It was the record that made everything else possible. The civil settlements, Lucas said. It was not a question exactly, more the way you say something aloud to acknowledge that it exists. 21 of the 23 have reached agreements, I said. The remaining 2 are still in a process, but Arthur says they'll resolve before spring. The company is paying. It should have been paying from the beginning. I looked at the road surface. It won't give those people back what they lost on a Tuesday morning 14 months ago, but it's what the law can do, and the company is doing it. My father's estate, Lucas said. The wrongful termination claim. Arthur filed the amended complaint last month, I said. Given the criminal findings, it's not going to be a contested matter. The settlement will be significant. I paused. I also want you to know that the company's board voted last week to commission a permanent structural engineering award in your father's name for early career engineers in California who demonstrate exceptional commitment to safety documentation. I looked at him directly. It was my motion. It passed unanimously. Lucas looked out at the bridge for a long moment. His jaw worked once. He pressed his lips together and breathed out slowly through his nose. He would have said that was unnecessary. Lucas said finally, his voice rough at the edges in a way that he did not try to smooth out. I know, I said. That's why it was necessary. Lucas laughed, a short, genuine sound, the laugh of someone caught off guard by something that is both sad and exactly right. He shook his head once, still looking at the bridge, and I could see in the set of his shoulders something that had not been there in the apartment in Culver City 4 months ago. Not lightness exactly, because some weights do not lift, but the particular adjustment of a person who has found a way to carry what they carry without being bent by it. We stood there a while longer, without the need to fill it. The morning traffic continued across the span. A cyclist head down against the cold. An old pickup truck with a ladder rack and 2 men in the cab, probably heading to a job site, probably thinking about nothing except the work ahead. Eventually, Lucas pulled his hands from his pockets and straightened. I should get back, he said. I have a site meeting at 11. Go, I said. Do good work. He put out his hand. I took it. The handshake lasted a moment longer than a professional handshake needed to, which was the right amount. He walked back to his car without looking back, and I watched him go, and then I turned back to the bridge. I stayed another 10 minutes, just standing at the rail with the cold steel under my hands and the traffic moving across and the pale December sky overhead and the wash, dry, and silver below, thinking about 35 years of building things, and 1 week of finding out what had been built inside all of it without my knowledge, and about the people who had known and stayed quiet, and the people who had known and kept records anyway, and about a 16-year-old girl in a red jacket who had been pulled out of a debris field by a young man whose father's name was on the foundation of the bridge I was standing on. A bridge can be built from steel and concrete and load calculations and inspection protocols and every best practice the engineering profession has developed over 150 years of building things and learning from the ones that failed. But the thing that determines whether it holds the thing underneath all of it, more fundamental than the materials and the methods, is whether the people who built it were willing to tell the truth about what they found when they looked at it honestly. Harold Reed had been willing. It had cost him everything he had. The bridge was standing. I let go of the rail and walked back to my car. I had a board meeting at 2 o'clock. There were contracts to review and a Sacramento project to discuss with Lucas's new firm, and a quarterly safety audit that was going to take most of the following week. The work was not finished. The work was never finished. That was the thing about building things. There was always another structure waiting, always another set of calculations to run, always another reason to get it right. I drove back toward the city with the pale winter sun coming through the windshield and the bridge in my rearview mirror, already shrinking, already becoming just another part of the landscape that people crossed every morning on their way to wherever they were going, never thinking twice about what was holding them. That was exactly what it was supposed to be. I have spent 35 years building bridges, but the hardest thing I ever had to build was the courage to look at the truth when the truth was standing inside my own house. This is a family story I never wanted to live. Family betrayal does not arrive with warning signs. It arrives with a handshake, a wedding ring, and a smile you chose to trust. Do not be like me. Do not wait until the cracks appear. Pay attention to the small things, the unanswered questions, the explanations that almost make sense. I ignored them for too long, and people got hurt because of it. I believe God does not waste pain. He placed Maggie at her desk with an envelope she refused to destroy. He placed Lucas at my door with a box his father left behind. He placed Emily in that room with a phone she almost deleted. Nothing about that week felt like luck. It felt like something older and more deliberate than luck. My personal belief family story, or not the truth, always costs someone something. The only question is whether you pay it willingly or wait until it is taken from you. If this family betrayal moved, you drop a comment, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe to walk with us through the next story. Thank you for staying until the very end. Stories on this channel contain fictional elements crafted for reflection and inspiration. If this content is not right for you, we respect the find what speaks to your heart.